All right, welcome everybody. This is the Kubernetes SIG architecture production readiness sub-project meeting for April 8th, 2020. Um, actually, if somebody else, I'm logged in here on a different account. So if somebody wouldn't mind displaying the agenda, I'd appreciate that. I can't do that from here. But nonetheless, few things to cover. One is there's a PR I put out there for making, thank you, for making PRR part of the KEP process, and there was a little bit of feedback on that, and so I need to update that, and hopefully we can get that merged. So that'll be then in 119. That will be part of the process, and I plan to be last for 118. I was on the enhancements team for the release team as a shadow, and I'm going to do that again, hopefully 119, which would allow me to kind of guide this a little bit through that process.
One question, John. I'm just showing this browser window, right? Not my whole screen?
Correct.
Excellent.
Yes. So I think there were a few comments in there, and Wojciech and I talked about this yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And he put another comment on there, but we'll try to get something in, even if it's a little more manual in 119, and then layer in tooling later. But it'll help us learn. So beyond that, there are a few other outstanding items. One, so tomorrow is the SIG Arch meeting, and we're supposed to do a readout from our sub-project, and I have not yet done, when we went through now like a month ago, went through all the survey results, we had a few additional questions and analyses that we wanted to do, and I didn't have a chance to do those yet. I'll try to get to those before the readout tomorrow, but I'm not confident because I've got a lot of meetings and stuff today. But I'll try to do that, and if I can, then at least what I really wanted to do was produce something of a little bit more of a report on this, which highlighting the most interesting pieces, because we've got a lot of material, but I don't know that I'll be able to do that much before tomorrow, and I'll figure something out for the readout then. And David, it looks like you added something there.
Yeah, so related to that PRR survey that we sent out, we did go ahead and merge that required transition from beta, and I am now working on some code generation and verify scripts to try to enforce it inside of our code. During when PRs are open, we'll run it as part of the verify jobs, and hopefully add sufficient data to actually enforce it inside of a REST handler. So, the REST handler, maybe we have a way to just instantly stop serving an API that is deprecated until someone turns it back on.
Time bomb people.
I know that if it's not automated, I will probably forget. So
absolutely. I just thought it would come up as like, yeah. I was imagining that would be implemented more in process tooling, not in actual runtime clusters. But it's an interesting thought.
Yeah, runtime sounds even better for me. I didn't think about it, and I thought that it might be tricky, but given that you have it already, you are already working on it, it sounds great.
I'm working on it. I think it has some potential. It dovetails nicely with work that Jordan's already done to make conformance not rely on beta APIs, for instance, which makes it really easy to remove them. You stop serving them, you remove the tests, and it's gone. Jordan's also looking at trying to add the ability to have warnings come out of REST handlers back to clients, which would give us another means of communication, like, hey, you're using a deprecated version of this
How
API.
does that work? But how does that work? Like if I'm running release 113 or well, okay, say 118 or 119 when this has been implemented, and what you're saying is that even if I don't change my software and upgrade, I'm going to lose access to these beta APIs?
No, it would be on a boundary, right? So the beta API would be listing,
Okay.
would have hard coded in it, like in 120, I get deprecated.
Okay.
That's
Thank
supposed
you.
to be removed in
That makes,
120.
now I'm not afraid. Okay. I was like, I thought you were like,
No trips to the internet, none of that.
okay, that was, okay. Got it.
But
That makes
so
sense.
it lets us do things like, codify the transitions that Jordan had us go through when he was deprecating and removing beta APIs, where you have the announce, you're deprecated, you're going to get a warning. Later on, I'm going to stop serving you by default. You can turn me back on, but by default, it's no longer going to be served. And then finally, like, no, you just can't serve this.
That's great. Yeah, no, that would be nice.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, hopefully we can actually, yeah, that's.
So that's probably my big objective in this effort for 119, is to try to get the pieces in place to make that happen.
Okay. Awesome. And so the other, excuse me, I didn't finish going through this list and figuring out, I wanted to go back through the document. We had a few, in the beginning, we started this process, we had a number of efforts. So we had a postmortem effort, an effectiveness measures effort, and then we had the field research. For the field research, we did the survey, but I think we also had a component of that that was going to be more of a interview, and Valerie's here, I see. So I believe she's one of the ones who signed up for that, or at least, so we did collect as part of the survey a bunch of people who said they were interested in more. So I think probably what we would want to do is kind of figure out what we want to learn from those interviews before we go and talk to people. And so, Valerie, are you still able to have the bandwidth to do that sort of thing over the next few months?
Most likely, I would have to poke a little bit more at the exact scope before committing, because I am scattered in a lot of directions right now.
Sure, understood. Okay, so I guess then our next steps on that are to probably define what we really want to learn from it and make sure that we're not wasting people's time. I think that there's a number of things that we didn't ask well in the survey that we could learn through these interviews, like when you had to roll back, what version was it that you had to roll back? So that when we go later and run the survey again, we can see whether introducing this process has actually improved either the frequency of rollbacks or the smoothness of rollbacks, if not the frequency. So that would be one thing, in my opinion, we need to learn, but I'm sure there's a lot more. I guess as a next step there, I can start a document maybe where we start to talk about what we want to learn out of those interviews, and then send it out and people can add their thoughts there.
Yeah, I'd like to, as we develop that, try to think about what we would do in terms of changes. I think that in some ways we kind of lucked out in the survey results, leading us to, I'll say, an obvious change, but like a natural change where, oh, everyone's depending on beta. Well, we need to figure out which of our beta APIs are actually being treated as GA, and end up in a situation where beta becomes obvious that it's beta, and the ones that need to get promoted go to GA. And so that was a clear outcome. I'd like to have similar, if it looks like this, we do this action. If it looks like that, we do that action.
Right. That's kind of, yeah, what we actually want to learn. That's what I mean.
Okay.
That way, you're saying it in a clearer way that, like, we don't want to go to people and take a bunch of time, our time and their time, and ask them a bunch of questions and have no actionable path out of that.
Right.
Yeah, agreed. That's kind of what, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say is that like whatever we come up with, let's make sure that if we're going to do this, that it comes up with something meaningful.
Sure.
Okay. And then David, you and Jordan had talked about doing a post-mortem type of thing and looking at previous cases where production readiness properties were missing from features we released, and what we might learn from that. Is that something you still see value in doing?
Well, I'll say we never did it. In some ways, I think the survey results are better. They don't have as many specifics, but they give sort of the situation in broader strokes as perceived by people who are not just like have a bajillion clusters, right? As we noted in the survey results, basically once you get past a certain threshold in terms of managed nodes and number of clusters, you've seen all the problems.
Right. You get everything. You have to do everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Which should have been obvious to us. Well, it seems like it should have been obvious to us. It wasn't. Live and learn. But yeah, Jordan and I have not actually gotten together and done that.
Right. No, I understood that hadn't happened because we time we said we would postpone it till after the survey. What I'm asking is actually whether you think we should keep tracking that as something we want to do, or whether we think it's not particularly valuable.
I think we're going to get more out of the individual interviews, right? Where if we can find a way to ask the right questions, we will see what people who don't like live and breathe this every day, or who aren't doing it in the same way we're doing it, perceive what we're handing down to them.
Okay. All right. So then, what I'll say, just trying to bring this back down to like what we're gonna do. I'm just gonna put some AIs in here. And then David, you're working on this, working on enforcement code. And I said I would do something for this. Fine. That's not going to happen for tomorrow, I'm pretty sure. All right, and then the last thing was for the field, the field research, interviews. I'll start a doc. I'm in a meeting, hon. And anything else we wanted to go over today? Any other action items? I say evaluate bandwidth. Availability. Interviews. And we can all help out with interviews too. If, you know, it's more just I wanted to make sure you were still up for putting some time on that. So, anything else, or should we call it today a nice short meeting?
I don't have any other ideas for what I would do in the next 2 weeks.
Okay. All right. Well, happily give everybody back almost 45 minutes. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Right.